everybody please just sit tight as we have the live stream beginning now, and we'll get underway in just a moment.
Again, if you're just joining us, come on in and make yourselves comfortable. We'll be starting the show shortly.
Doesn't seem to work.
Welcome, everyone. Historic Stetson Hall is on the National Register of Historic Places and has been a prominent landmark in Randolph, Massachusetts for the past 180 years. This building was built in 1842 using funds donated by Amasa Stetson, a prosperous shoe manufacturer. The first floor originally housed a school, town offices, and rental offices, and the Great Hall on the second floor was used for town meetings, concerts, and lectures. Randolph sent its young men off to war and welcomed them home again from the steps of Stetson Hall. In 1911, the Civil War monument was placed in front of the hall. The building served as town hall for 40 years, until town offices were moved in 1995. The Stetson trustees, who have overseen the building and its operation since 1843, began to plan the next phase of the building's life. Between 2001 and 2009, Stetson Hall underwent a $4.5 million restoration. For the past 12 years, the Great Hall has once again become a place for private and public celebrations, community events, and concerts like the one tonight. The current trustees, Lynn Feingold, Henry Cook, and Judith Gangle, welcome you. We acknowledge with thanks that this program is supported in part by a grant from the Cultural Council of Randolph, which is supported by the Massachusetts Cultural Council, a state agency. We are thrilled to have Reverend Robert Jones and Matt Watroba with us tonight. They are amazing musicians, and we look forward to learning from them. Please welcome them to the virtual stage at Stetson Hall. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Good, you can hear us okay? My name is Matt Watroba, this is Robert Jones, and we are absolutely thrilled to be there. After that description, though, Lynn, it really does make us wish we could be inside that hall. It sounds absolutely awesome. Well, I don't know if you know what you're getting yourself into here tonight, but we like to think of this as sort of a musical journey through our history here in America. Robert and I met almost 40 years ago. Doing back-to-back public radio shows on WDET in downtown Detroit on the campus of Wayne State University. We still live right here. Robert lives in Detroit. I'm just outside of Detroit. But it was kind of an interesting experiment. Robert did a kind of a country blues from the lowland show. I did a folk music show. And that's how we met, doing these things back-to-back. And somebody thought it would be interesting to see what would happen if they put us on stage together. What would happen with blues?
Matter and antimatter.
Matter and antimatter. Matt. Well, isn't it interesting that we ended up playing country music? That seemed to be the thing we had in common. So since that day, we've always began every show just about with this old Hank Williams song. Because, you know, I heard say that genres, trying to categorize music, is really just for record stores and radio stations. You know, this old music never got categorized until it was necessary. So we'll show you what we're talking about. This has a part in it for you. All you have to do is every time we sing Mind Your Own Business, you shout it back right into your microphone. Here we go. Why don't you mind your own business?
Mind your own business.
I said mind your own business.
Mind your own business.
If you mind your business, then you won't be minded mine. So try that with us. There's a plan to be a fussy mister, that's alright. Me and that woman got a license to fight. Why don't you mind your own business? I said mind your own business.
Mind your own business.
If you mind your business, then you won't be minded mine. There's a lady on the party line that knows these things. She picks up the receiver when she notices my ring. Why don't you mind your own business? I said mind your own business. If you mind your business, then you won't be minded mine. You got one there, Robert? You all right? Hold that breath, man. If I want a honky-tonk around a 2 or 3, well, that's my headache, brother, don't you worry about me. Just mind your own business. I said mind your own business. If you mind your business, then you won't be minded mine. Oh, do it again, Robert. Let's hear it. raise your hair up high. All the boys whistle when she walks by. Why don't they mind their own business?
Mind your own
I said, mind
business.
your own business.
Mind your own
If you
business.
mind your business, then you won't be minded mine. Got one more in you, everybody? Minding other people's business seems to be high tone. I got all I can do just to mind my own. Why don't you mind your own business? I said mind your own business. If you mind your business, then you won't be minded mine. But if you mind your business, you stay busy all the time.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You can
Appreciate
see
it.
by the little flutter in your windows that you like that. Thank you very much. That's a little taste of folk music. And it's not folk music because of the style of it. Because there are lots of styles within folk music. It's folk music because of the nature of it. It's the kind of music everyday folks used to make and in some places still make for themselves and for each other. You get a friend with a guitar, add a friend with a harmonica, add some folks, whether by Zoom or in person, and you got folk music. Now, what we really like about this music is like this is the stuff that came before the stuff our kids listened to, before there were laser light shows and explosions on stage and pyrotechnics and wardrobe malfunctions and all that kind of carrying on.
We hope, anyway.
We hope. This is the kind of stuff where to keep the audience hooked, you had the tricks of showmanship. Maybe you played a note, really long note on a harmonica. Maybe you played the harmonica upside down. Maybe you played with your nose. Whatever it took to keep that audience hooked is what
And by
you
the way,
did.
that also keeps his musical partner from borrowing his harmonica.
It is a good way to keep the harmonicas in the camp. That's right. But as much as we like the tricks of showmanship, what we really like is the fact that this music has a lot to teach us about ourselves and about each other and about where we've come from and about where we're going.
And it's amazing. Over the decades that Robert and I have been playing this music, performing this music, we just keep learning over and over again what a wonderful window that traditional music is, people's music is, into our story. Robert and I grew up 20 minutes apart from each other. I was in the suburbs of Detroit. Robert was in the city. And we might as well have been in two completely different worlds, even though we were 20 minutes apart. And we started figuring that music was the great connector. Music was that common denominator. And it's true about music all over the country. People, and in fact, one of the things we've discovered is that if it wasn't for the sharing of this music among cultures, we wouldn't have American music. And I think that's what we're going to sort of prove to you over the next hour or so as to how, well, you know, it's funny. People will say, do you guys do one of those diversity tolerance programs? And I always have to laugh because Robert and I, you know, we tolerate back pain.
Folks tolerated slavery.
That's folks tolerated
It
slavery.
was stuff that you couldn't change.
That's
So
right.
you just had to put up with it.
We
right?
celebrate diversity because if it wasn't for diversity and the sharing of this music, we wouldn't have it. And the other thing we notice too is that it's real easy to find the differences among this music and among these folks. But it's even easier to find the similarities, especially when it comes to music. Sometimes we like to think of music as a tree. So if you imagine this huge tree out in the middle of the forest, and each branch on that tree is a different kind of American music. You might have a jazz branch, a rock and roll branch, a hip hop branch, a rap branch. But the truth is, when you trace those tree limbs down into the ground at the root, which is such a great metaphor for this music, roots music, because those branches all are related at the root. We'll give you an example, that song we were just playing. Great old song by Hank Williams, Mind Your Own Business. But watch what happens, you guys, when I take those same three chords. I'm playing an E major, an A major, and a B7. I'm going to play the same chords in the same order. I'm going to give them the same amount of time. The only change will be in tempo. So I'm going to take that same song and just slow it down. And watch how another branch pops off that musical tree. You ready, Robert?
Yeah, let's try it.
Same song. You could even sing it. 'Cause if you mind your business, you sure won't be minding mine. So with that one simple change, all of a sudden, you have this music we call the blues. And sometimes they use it for all different things. Why it ends up in a Cialis commercial is beyond me. But I guess we don't have complete control as to where this music goes. And as Robert has mentioned, that may be a different...
That's a different kind of blues.
That's right. So we take those same 3 chords. This time, rather than go slow, we'll speed them up and see what happens when that happens. You ready? Yep.
1, 2, 3, home. We down in Louisiana, down in New Orleans, back up in the woods of Mother Evergreen. Leaving old cabin made of earth and wood, with a little boy named Johnny B. Good. Little boy can never read or write so good, but he can play the guitar just like a ringing a bell. Go, go, Johnny, go, go.
And all of a sudden,
go, Johnny, go.
We
always stop me before I get to my strut.
He was about to stand up and do a duck walk away from the camera, so we couldn't have that happen.
Well, Zoom does have its limitations, but the idea is, right, tempo, right? Change the tempo. You kind of can change the style. You can do all kinds of amazing things with this American music, but those are the branches, right?
That's right. And very often we come to town and we do concerts for folks, and during the day, they'll farm us out into the schools, into the elementary schools, into the high schools and the middle schools. And we often think, we could come right out with the branches if we wanted to. We could.
Yeah, we could impress those kids, say, if you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. If you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. We like Beyonce, but really that's not our gift. We talk about this idea of introducing those kids, and man, back before the pandemic, we used to get these kids all across 400 kids in a gymnasium, and the idea was, that's right, man. Back in the day, when folks were saying they knew kids needed a gymnasium, a cafeteria, and an auditorium.
So why not have them all be in the same room?
No, man, not now. So yeah. So what we do is we would get those kids all together, and we give them a little history lesson, but using music as our common device.
We'll let you in on some of that this evening, as a matter of fact. But to do that, to really go at the root of this music, you can't start in the 21st century.
No, you can't start with the branches because they change too rapidly, right? You got to go to the root. So imagine we're not in 2021, and imagine we're neither in Detroit nor are we in Boston, but we're in the South, somewhere in the South. Let's say around Mississippi, Tutwiler, Mississippi. And we have, the year's about 1845. So we hear this music coming from this old weather-beaten building up on a hill. Windows and the doors are flung open because it's a hot day and you're trying to get a breeze through. And you hear this music that is familiar, but at the same time can be unique depending on who's doing the singing.
So this is what you hear on that hot day. Leaning up against the tree, wafting through the air from that old building. You hear, amazing grace, how sweet the sound. You might even sing, that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Of course, that old building we're talking about was a church, because you really can't study the roots of American music without looking at the kind of music that was coming out of the churches back in that period. But the only problem is, back in that period, all churches weren't the same. You could go 500 feet down the path and have a completely different experience in another kind of church.
That's right. You remember the great writer and abolitionist Frederick Douglass described something called the invisible church. And that's where those enslaved people would go into a barn or a stable or a stand of trees, and they would have church. And because of the great enlightenment that happened, they're singing the same songs, they're reading the same scriptures, they're hearing the same preachers. But because of something really important that we'll talk about in just a minute, the song doesn't always sound the same coming out of that barn. So out of that barn or that stable, you hear something like this. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh Lord, I see. And we've gone into those classrooms and asked those kids, those little second graders, if that's the same song. And they go, no. And the reason they don't get it is because the song is so different, just 500 feet down the road. Well, what changes that? Well, a couple things. One is something called the scale. Folks who came over from Europe brought the scale. And we all grew up with it, so much so that we thought that was the only scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. But folks who came over on ships like the Amistad, they brought a different scale. It's called the minor pentatonic. Starts on the same note and ends on the same note. It gets there in only 5 steps. Step into the bad side.
And almost every rock and roll lead guitar part is based on that 5-note scale.
But something else changes that song, and maybe that's even more important than the scale. And it's the fact that when you write it down, it doesn't change over distance or time. So if you're in that church that Matt is a member of, you have a hymnal and you write it down. So your father sings, Amazing Grace. You sing, Amazing Grace. And your son sings, Amazing Grace. And 7 generations later, your great-great-great-great-granddaughter moves to Boston and sings, Amazing Grace.
That's how they sing in Boston.
Yeah, it's Boston. Well, it changes a little bit, but not that much, right? But what happens in those places where you don't write it down? You pass it down. Kind of like the game we played when we were little, telephone. Never the same when it gets to the end. Father used to sing, Amazing Grace. You decide it's not fancy enough, and you sing, Amazing Grace. Little do you know your son is going to fall in love with that pretty girl from Kentucky. When she sings the babies to sleep, she's been known to sing, Amazing Grace. And before you know it, 7 generations later, your great-great-great-great-granddaughter, Aretha, moves to Detroit, puts on a really cool hat, and sings, Amazing Grace. That's just 2 words. So 20 minutes later, Not only have you heard Amazing Grace, but you've experienced the folk process.
And what we tell people about the folk process more than anything else is that what sets this people's music apart from others is that it has to be adaptable. It has to be something that can change over time. It has to be something that can be easily learned so that we can change it, which is why we still hear those old church songs in music that comes out in the 21st century. And we actually challenge kids because we tell them the only way this happens is if these songs go from generation to generation. And since we're not writing them down, you have to be the ones that pass on the folk songs to the next generation. And this always scares them. So I tell them, I say, I know right now you probably have 25 folk songs already memorized. And they won't believe me, and so I'll bet them their lunch money.
That's got us kicked out of more schools.
Turns out you can't bet kids their lunch money. Don't do that if you're performing in schools. But the kids, here's the example I give. I say, all right, we only have 90 seconds, so let's play this game. I'm going to prove to you, 5 folk songs in 90 seconds. So I'll do things like this. I'll go like, okay, number 1. Old MacDonald had a farm, and all of a sudden they're all singing that song. It doesn't matter if they're high school age or whatever, they all know that song, of course. Or I'll sing, how about this one? There was a farmer who had a dog, and Bingo was his name. They all know that song, and they sing it loud, and they get louder every time because we're reaching into something that they can connect to. And I'll sing, oh, the wheels on the bus go round and round, round. And of course they know that song and they'll start doing all the gestures. I'll say, how about this one? She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. And they all know all the callbacks and all the gestures to that one. And then I'll say, all right, well, there's 4 already. How about if I'll just not play the guitar. I'll just do something with my hands. And I bet you will all start singing. And I'll go like this. And they all start singing the Itsy Bitsy Spider. So it becomes very clear that I could keep going until we reach 25. And then I have to tell them the reason we kind of fooled them is because these are songs they didn't know were folk songs because they learned these songs when they were too young to complain about it, right? These are the songs that parents and grandparents and uncles and aunts teach their kids. And believe it or not, I tell them, one day when you're holding that little boo-boo in your arms of your own and you look down into little boo-boo's eyes, chances are you won't be singing.
If you like, then should put a ring on it. If you like, then should probably not.
It's probably not going to be Beyonce. It's going to be The Wheels on the Bus or God forbid, Baby Shark, or one of these songs that have become part of their consciousness, right? Those are the ones that move on. And it's true, and you guys know this, especially if you're part of the Folk Song Society, that, there have been many, many, many more songs that have been forgotten than have been remembered. And the songs that we remember are the songs that we sing. And so that's how they get passed on from generation to generation to generation. So, I'll give you an example of a song that we're pretty sure was probably sung around the campfires on one of those mornings when the Underground Railroad there was going to be an escape from one of these plantations. And of course, everything folks had to sing had to be in code back then. Now, you all know about all those spirituals that have been adapted for the Underground Railroad and later for the Civil Rights Movement. But this is a song that was copyrighted in 1900, but we know that it existed years and decades before that. So imagine that you're sitting around this campfire knowing that 2/3 of your friends and your family will be leaving that night to head up north. And they need a song that would sort of soothe them, that will sort of give them hope. And this song could have easily been one of those songs.
I'll be alright. I'll be alright. I'll be alright one day. Oh, one thing I know, if I do not yield, that I'll be alright one day.
Now, sometimes when we're with the kids, we'll stay in the 19th century a little longer and show them the difference between some of the instruments. But I think we need to get into the 20th century here pretty quickly to show you how this works. And can you imagine at the turn of the century, from the 19th century to the 20th century, all of a sudden all people can start singing what's on their mind. And isn't it interesting that it's that point where we get the blues, one of the truly American forms of music. So we want you to imagine it's like 1910, 1911, 12, something like that. And we're down in southern Mississippi. And every day, this guy is outside playing the blues. Now you can sing the blues about a lot of things. Isn't that right, Robert?
That's right. You can sing about, women.
Yeah.
Dogs that won't hunt. Fish you can't catch. Women.
Yeah.
Cars that won't start. Money, the lack thereof. Women.
Yeah.
So we're gonna sing this song about women. In fact, one woman. Her name is Thelma. My man is giving her gifts. Approached her with niceties. She's not impressed. I got a T for Texas, T for Tennessee. Got a T for Texas, T for Tennessee. I got a T for Thelma. A man and a woman gave the blues to me.
Now, can you imagine hearing that sound for the first time? You know, I imagine myself being a white guy, which is not a stretch for me, going down in Mississippi during that time and hearing this guy do this and wanting to play your own sort of version of it for your girlfriend who did you wrong, who also happens to be named Thelma. But when he does
hate small towns.
When he does his song, comes out a little different. He comes out like this. I got a T for Texas. I got a T for Tennessee. I got a T for Texas. A T for Tennessee. I got a T for Thelma, the one who gave the blues to me. Yodel-o, 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 yodel-o. Now we have no idea where the Swiss guy came from. He was probably just yodeling through town when Jimmy Rogers took the blues that he heard all around him and put that yodel on it. And all of a sudden, one of those branches popped off that musical tree. Where there was no country music, all of a sudden, there was country music. And the 20th century is just example after example of how that happens because of inventions like the radio and the phonograph.
And the television.
All of a sudden, people didn't just hear the music regionally. They could hear it broadcast from Texas to Montreal. And so the music started changing rapidly. But the idea of it being basically simple doesn't change.
That's right. So when you think about this is commercial music, but it's commercial music that's based in folk music. I mean, you can imagine Son House down in Coahoma County, Mississippi, inventing something that would one day be called Delta Blues. For Son House, it was just music. But he took these 3 chords and 5 notes, the major pentatonic scale, and turned it into death letter blues. I got a letter this morning. Are you ringing? I should mention something. Son House adapted this from a work song. So these guys are like, that's the rhythm, right? Got a letter this morning. Are you ring? Said hurry, cause gal your love is dead. Got a letter this morning. Oh Lord, I ring. Said hurry, cause the gal your love is dead.
Now folks, take a sip of your beverage or whatever you're doing, take a deep breath, because Robert and I are about to demonstrate for you how most of 20th century commercial music is pretty much based on 5 notes and 3 chords, the 1, 3, and the 5, 4, and the pentatonic scale. And we're going to show you that, maybe 6, 7 decades of music in about 8 minutes.
Let's try it.
Want to do it?
So Son House's Death Letter Blues didn't stay in the Delta. And those 5 notes migrated north to cities like Memphis, which was just 50 miles away. And all of a sudden, a piano player started using on one hand, and those 3 chords on the other hand. Won't take me down my jumper, won't shine my overall. Won't take me down my jumper, won't shine my overall. Well, I'm about to catch a train, what they call a cannonball. And that was hot stuff in the 20s. Now, Jimmy Rogers had already made his impact with country music in the 20s, but the 30s rolled around, and you had the Great Depression. And a lot of those piano players started moving into churches in the North, just trying to make a living during the Great Depression. And all of a sudden, black church music started sounding suspiciously like boogie woogie, much to the chagrin of the pastor. Songs like this. Well, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Lord, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, well, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Well, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, Lord, I'm gonna let it go. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. The secret is same 3 chords, same 5 notes. You can imagine in 1935, you get a young man by the name of Bill Monroe out of Kentucky who invents something called bluegrass. Ladies and gentlemen, quite frankly, one of the most un-Negro kind of music you can imagine. 5 white guys standing around a single microphone that looks like this, wearing cowboy hats and periodically yelling, "Yee-haw!" is not my idea of bliss. However, there is blues in bluegrass, in part because of a black man by the name of Arnold Schultz, who taught Mr. Monroe a couple things about the blues, and in part because of Bill Monroe's guitar player. Fine guitar player by the name of Lester Flatt. Because at the end of those bluegrass lines, Lester plays the G run. Sir, would you demonstrate the G run?
I don't think you could have bluegrass music without this little lick at the end of every line.
Mighty fine.
Right.
I just came back from Merle Fest. I heard that 9 million times. Would you play that again?
Sure.
Very nice. Which is just played with a flat pick. So you end up with songs like, I'm going down the road feeling bad. Oh, I'm going down the road feeling bad. I'm going down the road feeling bad. Lord, Lord, you don't get treated there so well. Yeah. Same 3 chords, same 5 notes. Doesn't end there. Imagine it's 1948. And you got a young man by the name of Ray Charles, not to be confused with Jamie Foxx. And Ray Charles has a band. And Ray Charles comes out of the black church, so he's really singing gospel, but instead of saying Jesus, he says baby. And it works out real well until that night they run out of songs. And Ray said, that's all right, man. Just sing back to me when I sing to you. So you guys are in the band. Sing back to us when we sing to you. Though you are muted, you will still be heard. Say, hey, hey, oh, oh, hey, hey, oh, oh, hey, hey, oh. Tell me what I say. 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 Say, oh, 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 tell me what I say. 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 I say those are the same 3 chords and the same 5 notes, but now we call it R&B. But there's an in there. Imagine it's about 1955, and you traded in your radio and your phonograph for something called the television. You got a gigantic wooden box in the middle of your living room with a little tiny screen, and it only gets 3 stations. And that's a good thing, because even though there is no cable, that means everybody's sort of watching the same thing at the same time. On Sunday night on CBS, you hear, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a really good show for you tonight. You're going to enjoy this young man. He comes to us from Tupelo, Mississippi, by way of Memphis, Tennessee. He uses 3 chords and 5 notes, ladies and gentlemen." And the kid goes, "On for the morning, for the show. You get ready now, go back over, don't you? Where's my blue suede shoes? Yeah, you can do the things of my blue suede shoes. Yeah. Blue suede shoes, blue suede shoes, blue suede shoes, blue suede. You can do the things of my blue suede shoes." Thank you very much.
There's a reason why we kept the camera above his hips. Shouldn't see what's going on down there.
Like I said, Zoom has its limitations. But it doesn't end there. Imagine the impact that artists like Elvis and Chuck Berry had on American society. White kids wanted desperately to be Chuck Berry, and black kids wanted desperately to be Elvis. And they were listening to these artists, not caring about what their parents told them about black music or white music. They just knew it was cool, man, because they would listen to those 5 notes and those 3 chords. So by the mid-60s, you get a good-looking group from Detroit. 5 well-dressed and coordinated guys from Motown. And they play those 5 notes to a segregated gymnasium. And there's a rope down the middle to keep the black kids and the white kids from dancing together. But when those kids hear those 5 notes, the kids themselves tear down the rope and start to dance to The Temptations. I got sunshine on a cloudy day. When it's cold outside, I've got the month of May. Well, I guess you say what can make me feel this way, my girl, my girl, my girl, talking about my girl, my girl. Ooh.
That just remains my favorite part of the show right there. Just to get that little...
It's mighty fine.
But as you can see, this music, there's more alike than there are differences. You know, when those branches start popping off like that, it's just amazing to see how that happens. But, you know, we'll often do that little thing we just did at a school, at a middle school, and we'll still get this sort of reluctant look. They're like, that's cool, but that was like granddaddy's music. You know, what does that got to do with us?
With real music.
Right.
So we have to take them back to 1928, to the Death Letter Blues, to Sun House on Coleman County. But instead of doing it the way Sun recorded it in 28, we decided to change the tempo, speed up the song. Instead of doing each verse twice, we do each verse once. And then we eventually fade the music out, in which case this becomes the 1928 Death Letter Blues 2021, the remix, mix. It ends up like this. I got a letter this morning, how do you think it read? Said, hurry, hurry, cause the gal's love is dead. You know I packed up my suitcase, took off down the road. When I got there, she was laying on the cooling board. I either close and I looked down in her face and say, hey, you know I love you, but I just can't take your place. It seemed like the problem was standing around through the crowd. I didn't know how much I loved it till it took my baby in the crowd. For my own thing, I walk away and say, hey, you know I love you after see you judgment day. You know I woke up this morning, it was about the break of day. and I was hugging on the pillow when my baby used to lay. I went to church about damn. I tried to pray, but the police come along and they blowed my spirit away. Woke up this morning about the break of day and I was hugging on the pillow where my baby used to lay and saying, hush. I thought I heard her call my name. She didn't call so loud, but she called so plain. Yeah, boy.
So there you have it. All of a sudden, nothing wins over a bunch of middle school kids like a 60-year-old guy rapping. I can tell you that. But it does
it's a dirty job. Somebody's got to do it.
But it does bring home the point that there is much more to celebrate in common than there is to celebrate in differences. And that's kind of what we go around the country and talk to people. At least we used to. We're mostly stay-at-home musicians these days. But when we were out there, and we will be again, that's what we do. We go around and remind people of our commonalities. In fact, Robert and I recently started a nonprofit organization here in Detroit called Common Chords. We invite you to go check out the website in progress. It's called commonchords.net. But it's basically trying to break down those obstacles that keep us from getting to know each other. And one of the programs we developed in that was this show called 20 Minutes Apart that talks about our story and how we got rid of some of those obstacles and barriers. Those things are available to anyone who has the courage to get to know people that may not look like them, think like them, or act like them.
It's true.
But maybe we could show them some examples of some of these songs. You want to do Stew Ball maybe and
Works for me.
Sowing on the Mountain? All right.
Yeah. So Stew Ball is a song that's been a part of folk music forever. Like a horse race that allegedly took place 1700s.
In the 1700s in
the 1700s,
Ireland.
and it was skew ball, and noble skew ball no less. And it was just sung and recorded and changed so many times that by the time it comes to America, there are various versions of Stew Ball. There's Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Everybody knows Stew Ball was a racehorse, right? And I wish he were mine. Well, that's not this version.
No, and there's Lead Belly. Bet on Stew Ball and you might win.
That's
Bet
right.
on Stew Ball and you might win. It's not that.
I was going through my record collection and I found this version of the song by two amazing musicians, a piano player by the name of Memphis Slim and a bass player by the name of
Willie
Dixon. Two big guys over at Chess Records in Chicago, right? Willie Dixon wrote probably more blues songs than anyone else that you would recognize, right?
That's right.
But boy, Willie played bass, Memphis Slim played piano.
And we don't play either.
Right. So we have to come up with our version of their version of a song that's been, floating around in the game of telephone since the 1700s. And this is what we came up with.
That's right. But here's the cool part. We run across folks who say, I've been trying to play guitar for 30 years and I only have one chord. That's all you need for this.
That's all there's in this chord. That's right. So you astute music, I'll move. I don't even need to move my guitar in the picture because I'm just playing
one chord.
Yeah. And it's, in this case, a G.
Yeah.
You'll recognize some of the characters from the other songs. Was a big day in Dallas. Oh, I wish I was there. Spend my last $100 on that iron gray mare. See her travel all day long, long, long. See her travel all day long, all day long. Well, I don't mind horse racing if it wasn't for my wife. Oh, Stew Ball may stumble and away with my life. Wife and baby left behind. Wife and baby left behind. Left behind.
Old Stu-Bar, he was a black horse, just as slick as a mole. He had a ring round his four shoulder, and it shined like gold, like gold, like gold. He had a ring round his four shoulder, and it shined like gold. Old Stu-Bar, he was a racehorse, was a poor horse, he was blind. He ran so fast down in Texas, he left his shadow behind. behind, left his shadow behind.
Well, old Stu-Bar was a racehorse, and old Molly, she was too. Well, old Molly, she did stumble, and old Stu-Bar, he just flew around the racetrack all day long, 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 round the racetrack all day long, all day long, all day long, all day long.
Very satisfying chord. That is a great satisfying
Most
chord.
fun you can have with one chord right there. I'll tell you the truth, so many of these songs, too, filtered through the Carter family. And that's kind of like, you know, when the Carter family and Jimmy Rogers were both discovered in the same weekend by RCA Records and put on record, put on radio, it really did start to change the whole course of American music. Maybe before we do a couple solo songs or something, we'll do one song associated with the Carter family, but like with so many other of the Carter family repertoire, it is spread into all kinds of different genres. You can find this song in bluegrass, you can find this song in just about any kind of, Woody Guthrie had a version of it. Of course, the Carters
and of course, it was a song that was sung in churches as well. And, you know, some of those black churches, the way that A.P. Carter got into that church was a black man, a friend of his named Leslie Riddle. And Matt and I, thanks pandemic, we're supposed to do something called Riddle Fest down in Burnsville, North Carolina. But, you know, they had to, like, postpone it. But that's okay. We can still play this music and celebrate diversity. So,
well, the thing is that, you know, Leslie Riddle probably got A.P. Carter into places that A.P. Carter couldn't have got into.
That's right.
And so, you know, who knows how many of these standard classic songs came straight from those African-American families. It's kind of fun to listen. And you can tell the ones that you could hear in the churches. Especially.
Absolutely. Not to mention the fact that A.P. Carter was, Leslie Riddle was apparently a bit of a blues picker and taught Mother Maybelle something about the blues. So, ain't too bad.
So here's our little version of this song. I love the way Robert puts a little blues on it. Sowing on the mountain,
sowing on the mountain,
reaping in the valley,
reaping in the valley,
sowing on the mountain,
sowing on the mountain,
reaping in the valley,
reaping in the valley,
sowing on the mountain,
reaping
in the valley,
in the valley.
You're gonna reap just what you sow. If you've been a liar,
if you've been a liar,
better quit your lie.
Better quit your lie.
If you've been a liar,
if you've been a liar,
better quit your lie.
Better quit your lie.
If you've been a liar, better quit your lie. You're gonna reap just what you sow. If you've been a sinner,
if you've been a sinner,
better quit your sinning.
Better quit your sinning.
If you've been a sinner,
if you've been a sinner,
better quit your sinning.
Better quit your sinning.
If you've been a sinner,
if you've been a sinner,
better quit your sinning.
Better quit your sinning.
You're gonna reap just what you sow. Sowing on the mountain,
Sown on the mountain,
reaping in the valley,
reaping in the valley.
sown on the mountain,
Sown on the mountain,
reaping in the valley,
reaping in the valley.
sown on the mountain,
Sown on the mountain, reaping in the valley.
You're gonna reap
Just what you sow. God gave Noah
God gave Noah
rainbow sign.
rainbow sign.
God gave Noah
God gave Noah
rainbow sign.
rainbow sign.
God gave
God
Noah
gave Noah
rainbow sign. Won't be water, fire next time.
said it won't be water,
Won't be water,
but a fire next time.
fire next time.
Said it won't be water,
Won't be water,
but a fire next time.
fire next time.
Said it won't be water,
Water,
but a fire next
fire
time.
next time.
And God gave Noah
God gave Noah
rainbow. Play the blues, man. Someone on the mountain,
sown on the mountain,
reaping in the valley.
reaping in the valley.
Someone on the mountain,
Sown on the mountain,
reaping in the valley.
reaping in the valley.
Someone on the mountain,
Sown on the mountain,
reaping in the valley.
reaping in the valley.
You're gonna reap
Just what you sow.
yeah, you're gonna reap just what you sow. Said you're gonna reap just what you sow.
I was so anxious to use my G run, I used it early. Amen.
So yeah, we just love how all this music is connected. And you know, one of the things Robert and I do sometimes, we teach at the magical place in the mountains of North Carolina just about every summer called the Swannanoa Gathering. Some of you may be familiar with that. And that's right next to Madison County, which there's still to this day 7 generations of ballad singers. And you have to imagine that these ballads came over from, you know, England and Scotland and Wales. They got changed, they went back, they got changed, they came back again, and they got changed. So to hear 7 generations of this music and the way it changes and the subjects that they talk about is infinitely fascinating to me. And I think to probably you folks in Boston for the Folk Society, I love I really do like your emphasis on tradition and traditional music as well as songwriting. And we do both. So,
Yep.
you know, we'll give you maybe a little bit of an example of that as well. And we would be glad to also end just a little bit earlier if folks wanted to, you know, ask some questions in the chat room later. So we'll kind of take the temperature of the room and see if folks, I see you. The first thing I saw is you guys are awesome. That's a really good comment, I think.
Yeah, I like that. That's
Oh,
really
good.
nice.
We'll read some of those comments and maybe we'll have a little chat about that. We'll end about 20 minutes after the hour and do that. But what do you want to do next, Robert?
Well, you mentioned doing some solo stuff.
Yeah.
I haven't actually heard you in a while doing some solo stuff. So why don't you do a couple? I'll do a couple, and then we'll get together and finish it off.
I got to tell you, I got real spoiled last night. I did one of the first live shows I've done in a while, and I'm having trouble finding how to get the screen back here.
Oh yeah, see that's you. There you go for being technical.
Can you still see us, Lynn?
Well, I can see a real cute baby.
Oh, you're seeing my
You're
screen.
sharing the
Uh-oh.
screen.
What
Oh,
happened?
this
You
is
guys just got treated to my granddaughter. Can you imagine that?
He is just goofy. Now, I got 2 grandkids, and in fact, one of my granddaughters is having a birthday tomorrow. That's, she's turning 5. But Matt has his brand new granddaughter. She's just gorgeous, and he's just getting goofy. I never thought you'd share your baby butterball with the whole world.
Yeah, you
but
think I did
okay.
that on purpose?
No.
All right. Well, last night I had this opportunity to sing for about 100 folks in a church built for about 400. So we were safely distanced, and but I got to do something I haven't been able to do in about 18 months, which is to hear the most glorious sound I can imagine, other than my little granddaughter cooing and laughing, and that is people singing together. Because of a chance meeting I had with the great Pete Seeger, I did an interview with him on the banks of the Hudson in his 89th year, where Pete told me that getting folks to sing was the most important work he did in his life. I mean, this is a guy who marched on Selma. This is a guy who cleaned the Hudson River, a guy who traveled the world and brought world music back to America. And yet he said that getting people to sing was the most important thing he ever did. And I told Pete on that day that I would carry on that one tradition and start inspiring and performing community sings all over the country. And before the COVID hit, I had about 6 of them going in libraries just in the Detroit area. I know Boston has got all kinds of sings going on. It's a little underground movement because singing together feels good. And it not only feels good, it is good. Scientifically proven that when we sing, it heals us. It releases chemicals in our brain that make us feel better. And when we do it in community with other people, it can triple or quadruple the effect of the healing. So if you see a Matt Watroba concert, you can guarantee that we'll be singing together. And I've been thinking about this song, an old spiritual that they used in the civil rights movement. But I got this version from the great Joe Hickerson. And all you have to do to participate is just sing back to me what I sing to you, except for one line, which I'll teach you. So sing this. I'm on my way up to Canaan land. I'm on my way up to Canaan land. I'm on my way up to Canaan land. Now learn this line, it goes. I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah, Lord, I'm on my way. Try that. I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah, Lord, I'm on my way. It's a mighty hard road, but I'm on my way. It's a mighty hard road, but I'm on my way. It's a mighty hard road, but I'm on my way. Sing it out. I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah, Lord, I'm on my way. Do it again. I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah, Lord, I'm on my way. Well, if you won't go, don't you hinder me. Well, if you won't go, don't you hinder me. Well, if you won't go, don't you hinder me. Sing it out. I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah, Lord, I'm on my way. Sing it again. I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah, Lord, I'm on my way. Paul and Silas were bound in jail, had nobody for to go their bail. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. You know it, sing it with me. Hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. The only thing that we did wrong was staying in the wilderness too long. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. Sing it out now. Hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. I got my hand on freedom's plow, won't take nothing for my journey now. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. Sing it now. Hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. I'm on my way up to Canaan land. I'm on my way up to Canaan land. I'm on my way up to Canaan land. I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah, Lord, I'm on my way. Sing it again, but watch me. I'm on my way. Glory, hallelujah, Lord, I'm on my way.
I thought I was gonna get lost, and then you started singing that song. I'm like, I got to get some of that.
I feel better already. What do you got on your mind?
Well, let's see. Why don't you do that one? The one you wrote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like It's not that he's only written one song,
but I think I know which one.
But this is a pretty powerful song for the time we're living in, and it's pretty relevant. I love this song because it really says so much about the attitudes that we have toward one another, and how we've got to find ways to communicate that gets beyond our sameness.
I'm kind of fond of saying that I wrote this song when I realized that half of my Facebook friends unfriended the other half of my Facebook friends over the last couple of years. And I don't know if that's happened to you, but that's kind of country we're living in right now. So here's a little song I wrote called Could You Love Me? Could you love me if I don't look like you? Is it deeper? Is it stronger? Something hidden, something true. Stare a little longer, will I see myself in you? Could you love me if I don't look like you? Could you love me if I don't think like you? Is it deeper? Is it stronger? Something hidden, something true. Stare a little longer, will I see myself in you? Could you love me if I don't think like you? This life's a burning candle, and it would be a shame if we ignored the difference between the smoke and the flame. Could you love me if I don't pray like you? Is it deeper? Is it stronger? Something hidden, something true. Stare a little longer, will I see myself in you? Could you love me if I don't pray like you? This moment is a miracle, so why not find a way to be here and be grateful that we share another day? Could you love me if I don't love like you? Is it deeper? Is it stronger? Something hidden, something true. Stare a little longer, will I find myself in you? Could you love me if I am not like you?
That's just a gorgeous song.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy to say that folks are learning that song now and they're singing it. That's the biggest, I think, compliment a songwriter can have, is if other people want to sing their song.
One of these days, brother, you could be in the Unitarian hymnal.
No, you know what I'm fond of saying, Robert? As you know, nobody knows how famous I am.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's see. One of the things that I get questioned about a lot is my guitar, because as you can tell, even it's gotten even more weird looking since I've had it. That little stripe was not that noticeable when I first got it, but having baked in the sun, it now has this streak going up toward this rosette that looks like a church circle. Well, and it's pinstripe on top of that. So I wrote this song about my city of course, we represent Detroit. Even when we're on Zoom, we're in Detroit, right? So I wrote this song about my city and my guitar. This old house was built on Trumbull Street back in 1910 when the whole world worked for Henry Ford. He was the poor man's friend. Detroit money built it, but it outlived the fame of that city that put the world on wheels and gave Motown its name. But when you come from Detroit, you have to know, my friend, that you cannot surrender and you cannot give in. And even when you're broken and you're almost at the end, know that if you save the pieces, you will live again. Milton Smith, he lived in this old house for almost 60 years. And it had its share of singing, and it had its share of tears. Through the Coolies and Hernandez's, time would take its toll. 2012, they took you down, 102 years old. But when you come from Detroit, you have to know, my friend, that you cannot surrender, Lord, and you dare not give in. And even when you're broken and you're almost at the end, know that if you save the pieces, you will rise again. I'm just a Detroit storyteller, but I travel near and far. And the Detroit storyteller wants to play Detroit guitar. So I met a builder named Simnicki, a man of awesome skills. Arch tops, flat tops, ukuleles, ain't nothing he can't build. So I got something I'd like to show you, and I think it's kinda sweet. See, I built this from this old house that used to stand on Trumbull Street. I used maple from the floorboard and walnut from the shelf. And the top is from a ceiling joist I cut and cleaned myself. Now I play a Detroit guitar made of 100-year-old wood. And I got to tell you, she sings mighty good. Cause when you come from Detroit, you have to know, my friend, that you cannot surrender, Lord, and you dare not give in. And even when you're broken and you're almost at the end, know that if you save the pieces, you will sing again. Know that if you save the pieces, you will sing again. So, thank you so much. So the reason this guitar has pinstripes is not just pure vanity, but the fact is that this guitar is built from floorboards, maple floorboards from that old house on Trumbull Street. The top is from a ceiling joist, and I guess he put together two pieces of Douglas fir, and they're heartwood versus other wood, and then the dark wood is from the shelves of this old house, and inlaid at the 12th fret is 1910. And no matter where I'm playing, if I'm playing this guitar, I'm playing Detroit. So, having a sense of place is a pretty important thing. Now, I got something else in mind, and I want you to help me out on this one, Matt.
All right.
The guy is so cool that he had a couple planks left over. So he made this.
Turn it around.
Right? So, we don't know who Astra is, and we don't know if we want to.
Brian, do we want Astra to control our camera?
We don't know what this means.
No, definitely not.
Okay.
No.
Astra might be like from some planet. I don't know.
Before you know it, they'll be showing pictures of my granddaughter again.
Yeah, Astra took over your camera. That's what it was. So if you guys are a part of a folk music society, a folk song society, then you might want to know about a guy by the name of Washington Phillips. If you don't know about him already, he used to ride around on a wagon pulled by a little donkey in Teague, Texas. And he played some instrument that looks a lot like two auto harps welded together. He called it a melodeon. Some people called it a dulciola. But even if I could find one, I don't know if I could play one, and it would take 9 years to tune it. But it sounds really great on a ukulele. And I love this song because it is something he recorded in 1928. And he asked the question, what are they doing in heaven today? And it's a really, relevant song because I just heard that yesterday more people died from COVID than died from the Spanish influenza in 1918. And we wonder, what are they doing in heaven today? The chorus is really easy. Well, what are they doing in heaven today? For sins and sorrow are all done away. Ooh, peace abound like a river, they say. What are they doing there now? That's it. What are they doing in heaven today? Sins and sorrow are all done away. Ooh, peace abound like a river, they say. What are they doing there now? I'm thinking of those whom I used to know, who lived and suffered in this world below. They've gone up to heaven, but I want to know, what are they doing there now? Well, what are they doing in heaven today? Sins and sorrow are all done away. Ooh, peace abound like a river, they say. What are they doing there now? There are those whose lives were burdened with care, fought through their trials with time and tears, clung to the cross with a trembling fear. But what are they doing there now? Well, what are they doing in heaven today? Sin and sorrow are all done away. Ooh, peace abound like a river, they say. What are they doing there now? Well, what are they doing in heaven today? Sins and sorrow are all done away. Ooh, peace abound like a river, they say. What are they doing there now? There are those whose bodies were full of disease. Physicians and doctors couldn't give them much ease. Suffered till death brought a final relief. But what are they doing there now? Well, what are they doing in heaven today? Sins and sorrow are all done away. Ooh, peace abound like a river, they say. What are they doing there now? There are those who were poor and often despised, looked up to heaven with tear-blinded eyes, while others were heedless and deaf to their cries. What are they doing there now? One more time. What are they doing in heaven today? Sins and sorrow are all done away. Ooh, peace abound like a river, they say. What are they doing there now? Ooh, peace abound like a river, they say. What are they doing there now?
Cool. Peace abound like a river, they say.
Yeah, man.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, Washington. May he live on forever.
Well, if you keep singing his songs, they will, Robert. That's the way this whole thing works.
That's the point, isn't it?
It is. Well, I think we're going to do one more song, and then we'll open up the chat. If anybody wants to comment or ask any questions, if you'd prefer to put it in the chat, we can read that as well and answer it. But we'd love to hear your voice and see your face, assuming, you're properly dressed for Zoom. That's, we'll leave that up to you.
We have seen some things on Zoom.
We have seen some things. But, I thought maybe we would end with a song that we hinted at a little bit earlier. And very often when we're asked about, and it's a good question, does music, does art really make a difference in this world? Can a song change a life, a mind, a movement? And I think the answer is yes. There's something about music that speaks to the heart first, and then the brain second. And I think before the heart changes, the mind never changes. And art has a unique way of getting in there and making that difference. And I think when folks ask us, so give an example of a song that made a difference. The same song comes to mind every time. And that is the song based on that old hymn that they were singing around the campfire back in the mid-1800s. Back when they thought maybe there'd be a break from the plantation. Give them a little bit of that, Robert.
I'll be alright. I'll be alright. I'll be alright one day. One thing I know. If I do not yield, then I will be alright one day.
So skip ahead 100 years. We're at a place down in Monteagle, Tennessee, a place called the Highlander School, the Highlander Folk School. This is a place where a lot of the strategy for the Union movement took place. It's a conference center right in the Smoky Mountains. Beautiful, beautiful place. And in the 1950s and 1960s, it became the place where the civil rights movement was planned in so many ways. One of the things that Zilphia Horton and Miles Horton, who ran the place, one of the things they knew was that cultural expression was a really important part of this movement. So at the end of every one of their intense workshops, Zilphia would lead the group in that old hymn. And when it became clear after 1955 in Montgomery, Alabama, when this was more than just a bus boycott, but a movement that could change the world forever, they knew they needed a song to represent that movement. And rather than write a new one, which they had plenty of artists who could do that, they took that old hymn, specifically Frank Hamilton, Pete Seeger, and Guy Carawan, and they changed it to become the song that we believe makes a difference in this world. They couldn't say, I'll be all right. It had to be we, because this movement was about all of us. And it couldn't be just about being all right. We needed to overcome the obstacles to true freedom and equality for all people. All people. And so I will be all right became we shall overcome. And then I think it was probably Pete who said, no one's going to march to that.
That's how people have said it.
So let's put a little step to it. And all of a sudden we had a song that defined a movement. And all the movements since. Sing it with us. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome.
overcome someday.
And this, of course, was a song that, Lee Hayes described as a zipper song, because all you have to do is just change one phrase and you can keep the song going on the movement. Well, I'm going to tell you a quick story about something that Guy Carawan told Robert and I when we were down there doing an article for Sing Out magazine on Guy and his wife Candy. Guy said one night the FBI raided the place, which they always did. But on this particular night, they cut the power and they snaked through with guns drawn. And he remembers one little girl, one little 17-year-old African-American girl, who rather than panic, just simply said the words, "We are not afraid." And everybody started singing. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday.
America is so divided now. There's the red and there's the blue, and never the twain shall meet. But we gotta believe that one of these days we gotta sing the most radical verse of all. Red and blue together, red and blue together, red and blue together someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday.
Now, folks, I know that there's a whole host of people we should thank, but the one I'm going to just single out now, is Lynn Feingold. Thank you, Lynn, for making this concert possible. And to thank Lynn and to thank the society and the hall, let's all sing this song together one more time. You ready? Let's do it.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday.
This would be a good time to unmute and applaud everybody.
Magnificent.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Wonderful.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have just a couple of minutes. If you want to turn your camera on and unmute yourselves, and I can look quickly in the chat room.